Hello, my name is David Ades, and I'm a certified professional life coach. And the topic of today's video is why it's so important to open up about your experience of a narcissist. Or in other words, your experience of being narcissistically abused. These two are one and the same. Your experience of a narcissist is your experience of being narcissistically abused. That's because a pathologically narcissistic personality, in other words, a narcissist, is not capable of relating interpersonally in ways that are not abusive. I'm saying the narcissist is always and only abusing the human beings that they come in contact with. You are either close enough to notice that, you're either close enough and keen to their behavior enough to notice that inherent to the narcissist's concept of other human beings, there is something dehumanizing. Inherent to the way that the narcissist perceives other human beings, there is something dehumanizing. You're either close enough to see that, and you might make the mistake of taking that personally, saying, well, they seem to treat other people well. They get along well with others and they appear nice or kind or charming or intelligent to others. But with me, they abuse me and they're mean with me. Maybe it's because of me. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough, blah, blah, blah. That is an illusion. That is a mistake. There is nothing personal about the narcissist. That's exactly the problem. You are not anything personal to them. They don't know what that means. But in the same way, and this is part of the grieving process, the narcissist was never something personal to you either, because the narcissist is not something personal. They're missing that thing about their personality that would allow them to both truly be something personally meaningful to others and truly allow others or see others as personally meaningful to them. The lack of empathy that a narcissist is condemned to, cursed with. The lack of empathy goes both ways. The narcissist doesn't empathize with you because that thing that you would empathize with is also unavailable. You cannot love a narcissist. You cannot have that personal relation with them. And in kind, they cannot have that with you either. What I was saying was you're either close enough to see that, or you're far enough to not be able to tell that that's the way that it is. And you might fluctuate between sometimes you can remember that they're like this, or sometimes you forget that they're like this. Everyone to a narcissist is like a vending machine, an object. There's this dehumanizing element. Everyone is a vending machine of narcissistic supply. In other words, fuel for a grandiose false self. So when a narcissist is appearing funny to other people, appearing generous, or when a narcissist is exercising kind of interpersonal muscles, telling jokes and making comments, and they're only doing it for narcissistic supply. Other people are vending machines that they push the button on by telling jokes, they push the button on by complimenting other people, they push the button on, they're just pushing buttons on other people. And you will either cough up the supply, the drink comes out and they get to drink and they say, well, they don't say thank you. They just, if you're a good source of supply, they'll keep you around. Maybe they will say thank you. But if you're not a source of supply, they'll just discard you. That's how it works. You're either a vending machine in service to them or get away. The narcissist is kind of sucking on the teat of narcissistic supply. I mean that it is this kind of mothering. They're looking for the breast of their mother that they could never detach from. And I'm not saying that they were overweaned, literally. I'm saying that a narcissist is stuck psychologically between ages 2 and 3, where they are still, at least emotionally, sucking on the teat of their mother. They're not ready to be in the world as an individual personality. Yet, when a 2 or 3-year-old is emotionally dependent on mother, we don't refer to it as pathological narcissism. When a 2-year-old fails to empathize with their peers or with other people, we don't really make that much of it. It's normal for a 2 to 3-year-old to lack empathy to some extent. It's normal for a 3-year-old to just want to get attention from everybody. It's not pathologically narcissistic, unless it gets stuck. And then as they develop biologically, their personality stays in this stage. And that's where the narcissist is. That's what a narcissist is. Someone whose personality is stuck at a 2 to 3-year-old stage. Just treating people like things that they can do anything with, demand. And the narcissist is ultimately trying to recreate a 2 or 3-year-old's relationship with mother. That's what you are to the narcissist. The closer you get, the more you get pressured, unconsciously, maybe consciously as well, subconsciously if you prefer, by the narcissist, by the shared fantasy. You get pressured to become their mom. They're trying to recreate a very early childhood relationship with mother, almost so that maybe they could separate finally and their narcissistic personality could resolve into a later stage of development. It never works, though. This is why relationships with the narcissist always end in discard. This is why no contact is the way to go, because there's no resolution of that pathological narcissism. It's famously difficult to treat, it's very resistant to therapy, etc., etc. Don't listen to anybody who says, I don't know, they figured a way to treat it or something. There's behavioral modification with the narcissist, there's getting old and realizing their mortality, and so they can't keep up that much of a grandiose self, so they kind of have to step down from their own pedestal. But at the core is still this developmental issue. It doesn't get resolved. The psychologist Sam Vaknin created a kind of therapy called cold therapy, which is meant specifically for narcissism. And although it has a kind of symptomatic relief, at the core, Sam Vaknin, who not only is an expert on narcissism, but is a multi-time diagnosed narcissistic personality, says that even his type of therapy doesn't resolve narcissism because that's not how that works. This is a kind of inner child wound that doesn't get resolved. We like to talk about go back to the inner child and feel the pain. Yes, the narcissist is stuck 2 to 3, but it's something that they can't just go back and feel. It's more integral than some painful experience they had. It's more critical. It's more wounding, deeper. Anyway, this video is supposed to be about why it's important to open up about this stuff, but this is why. Well, the crux of why is because there are some things that we deal with in this life that are too much for one personality to successfully cope with. This is what trauma is. Trauma is when an experience is too much for the resources of the personality, the structure, the integrity of the personality to find a home for, to make sense of, to break down and process. The personality kind of suffers integrally. The integrity of the personality suffers when life's stressors are too much for the integrity of the personality, which is a thing. In the same way that if I put 1,000-pound weight on your shoulders, it would compromise the integrity of your body, the structure of your body. The structure of your body wouldn't be able to handle it. So too that occurs with emotional weights, so to speak. Emotional pain, emotional burden. And the way that we physically work to lift the things in life that feel like 1,000 pounds is by asking other people to help us lift them. In other words, we pool resources interpersonally. That's why it's important to open up about any plight, about any woe, about any difficulty. That's why it's important to be vulnerable. I don't mean that's why it's important. I mean, that's why we intuit that it is important. In the same way that if you have a child who comes from home from school and they look like they're troubled, you instinctively ask them to tell you. You know somehow that it is a healthy coping mechanism to reach for. Out of all the coping mechanisms, you intuit that the kind of best one, the most urgent one, the most important one is interpersonal pooling of resources. Open up to me about it. Maybe we can pool emotional stability, pool personality integrity, pool wisdom and thinking, critical thinking about it. We can pool our ability to plan and cope. And then it doesn't have to trouble you so much. It doesn't have to be such a woe. Or it can take its proper place as something that is now liftable. Now you can get the burden off of your shoulders. That's why it's important to open up. That's why we intuit that it is important to open up. Because it is a real thing that we meet and pool internal resources so that a heavier burden than one personality can lift can be lifted. Because it is real that burdens that are too heavy for one personality exist. In the same way that physical weights that are too much for one human body exist. You intuit that sharing is the kind of healthy coping mechanism. There are lesser ones, and if you don't reach for the healthier ones, you will find yourself reaching for the less healthy ones. The ones that it takes more of a toll to access. Opening up means that you have to pay the price of, I don't know, whatever resistance or inhibition you have about opening up. Could be you're afraid of opening up, could be you're anxious about it, could be you don't know how to do it, could be it would be embarrassing, it makes you vulnerable, which is a sign of weakness, and culturally you're not supposed to be weak. Your family taught you you're not supposed to share things that inconvenience other people, and it is inconvenient for you to share your woe with other people. All these kind of anti-communal lessons, reasons why community breaks down, because we hide from one another. Yeah, I'll handle it on my own, which sometimes or often means I won't handle it on my own. I'll keep it, I won't handle it, and that's how I'll handle it. Because at the end of the day, at least I'm alone with it. Because that's what I'm supposed to be, because that's what my dad taught me, or something like this. That's it, actually, for this video. I do want to mention that opening up about it includes you practicing opening up. Like, you can't just criticize. That's not a form of opening up. You can't just vent circularly. That's not a form of opening up. You might have to do those things to get to the opening up. So there's kind of no critique here, but it is a practice, is what I'm saying. You have to exercise this muscle. You also have to do your due diligence of finding someone to open up with who has the ears to hear or the eyes to see. Oh, this is the weight that you're dealing with? Okay, well, let's try to get it from here, and what do you need in order to get it from your angle? And the most dangerous thing about opening up about narcissistic abuse with someone who, you know, you're going to dedicate that time to speaking about them with, I mean like a coach or a therapist or something, is that they fail to see that this is narcissistic abuse. Maybe they're kind of personally or professionally interested in not using the word narcissism. Maybe they're they feel like narcissism is a bad word, but that's kind of the personal interest. Maybe they can't tell. So for example, let's say I'm being narcissistically abused. I'm in a relationship with a narcissist, and the shared fantasy pressures me to be like some sort of motherly figure. What if I'm taking that personally and I'm identifying with that, and I don't know the other person is a narcissist, and that this is all a game? And I go to the coach or I go to the therapist and I say, hey, I feel like I'm not good enough. And if the therapist isn't trained in this way, or the coach doesn't know, or whatever, they might just say, oh, well, how can we make you feel good enough? In other words, let's keep you in the shared fantasy, and let's prove that you're good enough. As opposed to, whoa, are you sure that this person isn't just kind of training you to feel like you're not good enough for them so that you stick with them forever, like fighting for their validation? Can we identify how that this isn't you? This shame isn't really yours, or this guilt isn't really yours. Can we get that muck off of you, as opposed to saying it's yours? And, you know, it's a more nuanced process than I might be stating it is, but it looks something like that. In any case, we do intuit that sharing is a healthy coping mechanism, and whatever inhibitions and resistances you might feel around that coping mechanism have to be faced. It is a brave thing to make oneself vulnerable. It is a brave thing to open attention to one's weaknesses. Not only is it the brave thing to do, it's the responsible thing to do, it's also the way that your personality develops wholly as a kind of, the sphere being the symbol of a kind of whole thing. In order to kind of buff out the scratches on your armor, in order to fill the chinks in your armor, you need to bring attention to them. And it might be embarrassing, and it might bring up associations, in other words, that are with embarrassment, because you've done this before and it was embarrassing, or you were taught never to do it, or whatever. But then, makes you brave for giving it a try. So whether it's with me or whether it's with someone who, for example, if you have health insurance, you might be able to have sessions dedicated to this stuff for a cheaper price than my coaching rate. In any case, if you want to work with me personally, click the first link in the description to schedule a call. Click the second link to take a free narcissistic abuse recovery quiz. Like this video if you do like it. Comment any thoughts, questions you have down below. Share this with someone who you think might benefit from it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I will talk to you soon.